Fortune telling is the practice of predicting information about a person's life. The scope of fortune telling is in principle identical with the practice of divination. The difference is that divination is the term used for predictions considered part of a religious ritual invoking deities as spirits, while the term fortune telling implies a less serious or formal setting, even one of popular culture, where belief in occult workings behind the prediction is less prominent than the concept of suggestion, spiritual or practical advisory or affirmation. Historically, a fortune-telling grows out of folkloristic reception of Renaissance magic, specifically associated with Romani people. During the 19th and 20th century, methods of divination from non-Western cultures, such as the I Ching, were also adopted as methods of fortune-telling in Western popular culture. An example of divination or fortune-telling as purely an item of pop culture with little or no vestiges of belief in the occult would be the Magic 8-Ball sold as a toy by Mattel, or Paul II, an octopus at the Sea Life Aquarium at Oberhausen used to predict the outcome of matches played by the German national football team. There is opposition to fortune-telling in Christianity, Islam and Judaism based on scriptural prohibitions against divination. This sometimes causes discord in the Jewish community due to the views on mysticism. Terms for one who sees into the future include fortune-teller, crystal gazer, spare wife, seer, soothsayer, sibyl, clairvoyant, and prophet. Related terms which might include this among other abilities are oracle, augur, and visionary. Methods. Common methods used for fortune-telling in Europe and the Americas include astromancy, Hori astrology, pendulum reading, spirit board reading, tasseography, cartomancy, tarot reading, crystallomancy, and chiromancy. The last three have traditional associations in the popular mind with the Roma and Sinti people. Another form of fortune-telling, sometimes called reading or spiritual consultation, does not rely on specific devices or methods, but rather the practitioner gives the client advice and predictions which are said to have come from spirits or in visions. Electromancy, by observation of a rooster pecking at grain. Astrology, by the movements of celestial bodies. Astromancy, by the stars. Augury, by the flight of birds. Basia, four pillars, by hour, day, month, and year of birth. Bibliomancy, by books, frequently, but not always, religious texts. Cartomancy, by playing cards, tarot cards, or oracle cards. Ceromancy, by patterns in melting or dripping wax. Cheromancy, by the shape of the hands and lines in the palms. Chronomancy, by determination of lucky and unlucky days. Clairvoyance, by spiritual vision or inner sight. Kleromancy, by casting of lots, or casting bones or stones. Cold reading, by using visual and oral clues. Crystallomancy, by crystal ball also called scrying. Extraspicy, by the entrails of animals. Face reading, by means of variations in face and head shape. Feng Shui, by earth and harmony. Gastromancy, by stomach-based ventriloquism. Geomancy, by markings in the ground, sand, earth, or soil. Haruspicy, by the livers of sacrificed animals. Hori astrology, the astrology of the time the question was asked. Hydromancy, by water. I Ching divination, by yarrow stalks or coins and the I Ching. Cao-cim, by means of numbered bamboo sticks shaken from a tube. Lithomancy, by stones or gems. Necromancy, by the dead, or by spirits or souls of the dead. Numerology, by numbers. Oniromancy, by dreams. Onomancy, by names. Palmistry, by lines and mounds on the hand. Parrot astrology, by parakeets picking up fortune cards. Paper fortune teller. Origami used in fortune-telling games. pendulum reading, by the movements of a suspended object; pyromancy, by gazing into fire; rhabdomancy, divination by rods; rune casting, a runic divination, by runes; scrying, by looking at or into reflective objects; spirit board, by planchette, a talking board; taromancy, by a form of cartomancy using tarot cards; tasseography, a tasseomancy, by tea leaves or coffee grounds; sociology. Western fortune tellers typically attempt predictions on matters such as future romantic, financial, and childbearing prospects. Many fortune tellers will also give character readings. These may use numerology, graphology, palmistry, and astrology. In contemporary Western culture, it appears that women consult fortune tellers more than men. Some women have maintained long relationships with the personal readers. Telephone consultations with psychics grew in popularity through the 1990s, but they have not replaced traditional methods as a business in North America. Discussing the role of fortune-telling in society, Ronald H. Isaacs, an American rabbi and author, opined, "Since time immemorial humans have longed to learn that which the future holds for them. Thus, in ancient civilization, and even today with fortune-telling as a true profession, humankind continues to be curious about its future, both out of sheer curiosity as well as out of desire to better prepare for it." Popular media outlets like the New York Times have explained to their American readers that although 5,000 years ago, soothsayers were prized advisors to the Assyrians, they lost respect and reverence during the rise of reason in the 17th and 18th centuries. With the rise of commercialism, the sale of occult practices in the larger society, according to sociologists Danielle and Lynn Jorgensen, Ken Feingold, writer of Interactive Art is Divination as a Vending Machine, stated that with the invention of money, fortune-telling became a private service, a commodity within the marketplace. As J. Pedersen wrote in the New York Times in 1994, whether it's 3 p.m. or 3 a.m., there's Dionne Warwick and her psychic friends selling advice on love, money and success. In a nation where the power of crystals and the likelihood that angels hover nearby prompt more contemplation than ridicule, it may not be surprising that 1 million people a year call Ms. Warwick's friends clientele. In 1994, the psychic counselor Rosanna Rogers of Cleveland, Ohio explained to J. Pedersen that a wide variety of people consulted her. Couch potatoes aren't the only people seeking the counsel of psychics and astrologers. Clairvoyants have a booming business advising Philadelphia bankers, Hollywood lawyers and CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. If people knew how many people, especially the very rich and powerful ones, went to psychics, their jaws would drop through the floor. Ms. Rogers claims to have 4,000 names in her Rolodex. Typical clients. In 1982, Danny Jorgensen, a professor of religious studies at the University of South Florida, offered a spiritual explanation for the popularity of fortune-telling. He said that people visit psychics or fortune-tellers to gain self-understanding, a knowledge which will lead to personal power or success in some aspect of life. In 1995, Ken Feingold offered a different explanation for why people seek out fortune-tellers. We desire to know other people's actions and to resolve our own conflicts regarding decisions to be made and our participation in social groups and economies. Divination seems to have emerged from our knowing the inevitability of death. The idea is clear: we know that our time is limited and that we want things in our lives to happen in accord with our wishes. Realizing that our wishes have little power, we have sought technologies for gaining knowledge of the future, gain power over our own Ultimately, the reasons a person consults a divine or a fortune teller are mediated by cultural expectations and by personal desires, and until a statistically rigorous study of the phenomenon have been conducted, the question of why people consult fortune tellers is wide open for opinion-making. Services. Traditional fortune tellers vary in methodology, generally using techniques long established in their cultures and thus meeting the cultural expectations of their clientele. In the United States and Canada, among clients of European ancestry, palmistry is popular and, as with astrology and tarot card reading, advice is generally given about specific problems besetting the client. Non-religious spiritual guidance may also be offered. An American clairvoyant by the name of Catherine Adams has written, "My philosophy is to teach and practice spiritual freedom, which means you have your own spiritual guidance, which I can help you get in touch with." In the African American community, where many people practice a form of folk magic called voodoo or root working, a fortune-telling session or reading for a client may be followed by practical guidance in spell casting and Christian prayer, through process called magical coaching. In addition to sharing and explaining the visions, fortune tellers can also act like counselors by discussing and offering advice about their clients' problems. They want their clients to exercise their own willpower. Full-time careers. Some fortune tellers support themselves entirely on the divination business, others hold down one or more jobs, and the second jobs may or may not relate to the occupation of divining. In 1982, Danielle and Lynn Jorgensen found that, while there is considerable variation among occupations, are overrepresented in human service fields, counseling, social work, teaching, health care. The same authors, making a limited survey of North American diviners, found that the majority of fortune tellers are married with children, and a few claim graduate degrees. They attend movies, watch television, work at regular jobs, shop at Kmart, sometimes eat at McDonald's, and go to the hospital when they are seriously ill. Legality. In 1982, the sociologists Danielle and Lynn Jorgensen found that, when it is reasonable, comply with local laws and purchase a business license. Quote, However, in the United States, a variety of local and state laws restrict fortune-telling, or require the licensing or bonding of fortune-tellers, or make necessarily the use of terminology that avoids the term fortune-teller in favor of terms such as spiritual advisor or psychic consultant. There are also laws that forbid the practice outright in certain districts. For instance, a fortune-telling is a Class B misdemeanor in the state of New York. Under New York State Law S-165.35, a person is guilty of fortune-telling when, for a fee or compensation which he directly or indirectly solicits or receives, he claims or pretends to tell fortunes, or holds himself out as being able, by claimed or pretended use of occult powers, to answer questions or give advice on personal matters or to exercise influence or affect evil spirits or curses, except that this section does not apply to a person who engages in the aforedescribed conduct as part of a show or exhibition solely for the purpose of entertainment or amusement. Lawmakers who wrote this statute acknowledged that fortune-tellers do not restrict themselves to a show or exhibition solely for the purpose of entertainment or amusement, and that people will continue to seek out fortune-tellers even though fortune-tellers operate in violation of the law. Similarly, in New Zealand, Section 16 of the Summary Offence Practices Act 1981 provides a $1,000 penalty for anyone who sets out to deceive or pretend for financial recompense that they possess telepathy or clairvoyance, or acts as a medium for money through use of fraudulent devices, as with the New York legislation cited above. However, it is not a criminal offense if it is solely intended for purposes of entertainment. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia also bans the practice outright, considering fortune-telling to be sorcery and thus contrary to Islamic teaching and jurisprudence. It has been punishable by death. Skepticism. Fortune-telling is dismissed by the scientific community and skeptics as being based on magical thinking and superstition. Skeptic Bergen Evans suggested that fortune-telling is the result of a naive selection of something that has happened from a mass of things that haven't, the clever interpretation of ambiguities, or a brazen announcement of the inevitable. Quote, other skeptics claim that fortune-telling is nothing more than cold reading. A large amount of fraud has occurred in the practice of fortune-telling.